Hey, deserving listeners, sister wives, let's see what happens.
Yeah, how do you know that?
You're very emotional. I think you wear your feelings on your sleeve. To live with that fear, how did you manage to conceal it?
I don't think she wears her feelings on her sleeve. She's the opposite. Christine wears her feelings on her sleeve. But Janelle and Mary are the opposite. I guess Robyn displays her emotion outwardly way more than Mary and Janelle do.
So when did you find out, Cody?
Well, not until just 3 weeks ago. But there was this situation was going on, and these people were, so I was seeing some of it, had people reaching out to me, this is a little weird. And I'm like, Mary, listen, these people are creepy. Can you can you cut them off? And she would just give me blank stares.
Okay, what it sounds like is that more recently, these individuals were making threats to him or something, trying to get involved in his life. Is this some weird psychopathic effort just to be a part of the family, to get into their circle? Because we haven't heard of any financial requests or exploitation. Again, it wouldn't be the first time that's happened. And then it sounds like what he's saying is he, from context, knew it had to do with her, or maybe even directly had to do with Mary. And she's like, hey, what are these fans doing? You need to do something. And then he found out. Is that what we're hearing?
So you thought these were friends that she'd made online that were creepy and
yeah.
kind of
but
bugging
the thing is the whole time I'm saying that to her, she was concerned that her house was bugged.
Which you could imagine, after being led down that rabbit hole, you could absolutely, and the threats might have been there. There might have even been evidence of that, right?
And frankly, there were some mistakes that I made very specifically in our relationship. And it was almost like a perfect storm. And so she's in a lonely and a vulnerable spot. And in the couple times I went to talk to her, one time she's just in tears. When I'm saying, hey, Mary, you need to stop this with these people.
When you said stop this with these people, what did you think was happening?
I thought she was just phone conversations and...
Yeah, I would imagine that would be the case. Why would you think otherwise? That's interesting. So then 3 weeks ago, she told him? Is that what I'm hearing?
And, texting.
It was just phone conversations.
Yeah, that's all I was. I actually, at the time, some of it was just what was online. I was like, hey, you got to stop this.
Help me again. I'm trying to...
I was reading a flirt. Okay.
Let me take a step back here. Obviously, this is your...
So it sounds like online there were posts by the catfisher, the criminal, the fraudster, the horrific individual, the psychopathic con artist, and then he saw those flirtings that were leaked. Is that what I'm hearing?
Wife,
Yeah.
you see a flirtation.
Right.
Let me hear your response as her husband when you discover this.
Well, okay, so
I'm glad that she's asking that question, because I think that a lot of attention and care should be given to Mary, who is a victim of a horrible. Sometimes I don't know the legality, but I've seen cases where this is not a crime. It's not a crime to lie to someone that you are acting like you're romantically involved with, apparently. So, and I guess I could be convinced that it shouldn't be considered a crime, because then people would be accusing people of crimes all the time, of like, you never loved me, I'm going to call the police. It's like, we don't want that. So there's that. So she deserves to be given a lot of space to talk, and a lot of empathy, a lot of care, a lot of compassion. But a secondary story, but a significant one, is that he was cheated on, and it sounds like he has just found out a few weeks ago. That's a component of it. I'm guessing, given his demeanor, that he knows not to make that front and center, to not make it about him, because it's mostly about her being victimized. It'd sort of be like if you found out that your spouse had cheated on you, but then you found out at the same time that they had been sexually assaulted by that individual. it would be confusing. There'd be a lot of shock and overwhelming feelings, but I would imagine that most of us would focus on the sexual. So, oh my God, what happened? Are you okay? Compassion, that direction of care. But then after that, you say, so were you meeting up with this person romantically? Is that what I'm hearing? You were dating? What's going on? That would be very hurtful. So I'm glad they're asking, as a husband, how did you feel? And I don't know why I have to say this, but whether you hate him or like him shouldn't matter. If he is a human being, then he deserves not to be harmed in this way. Mary was arguably way more harmed, and she's not to blame for that at all. We don't victim blame about that. But we also don't say that she allowed herself to engage, at the very beginning anyway, in a at the very least, slightly romantic relationship with another person. I'm guessing that there were flirtations from the catfisher, and she didn't shut it down. And I'm imagining that would be considered infidelity and hurtful and against the rules and a violation, So whether or not you like him or dislike him, that is not okay, and that is going to hurt, and that is deceptive, and it's at the very least lying by omission 1,000 times a day, because there's 1,000 times a day that you have an opportunity to say otherwise, and you don't. We understand why Mary did this, I think. I imagine you understand. And a lot of infidelity, once you hear the backstory, it's understandable. You're like, well, I could see how that would happen. It doesn't make it okay, and I wish you would have intervened with your life earlier and talked to someone or divorced or something. But anyway, I hope that they get that. The other thing is that he might not be hurt because he doesn't care, because he's distanced himself. Because, the interesting thing about this show is that from season to season, a lot of time has passed, and yet they don't act like anything has changed. And then we hear these little snippets where, because I'm operating on this assumption that for the first few seasons, he was trying to reconnect with everyone, particularly Christine and Mary, and they seemingly had. And they would tell the camera that everything was working out and their connection was real. And I guess as I say that out loud, there's a possibility, given the way that they talked to the camera for the first number of seasons, it could be that it was just what they said. I said that funny. I was going to say it was just what they say, just what they said, and I sort of blended the words together. And so they might have just been saying that, and they might have also been saying it because that's what they wished to be true, or it was the half-truth or something. And then all of a sudden, things will happen. I'm like, so the two of you have been distant for a long time, and it just hasn't been, because I think the way that they all deal with conflict, except for Christine, is to just avoid the whole thing and act like everything's okay. Which, there's some wisdom to when you're in a large collective situation like this, but I think there are cons that we're seeing right now. So there's a possibility that he and Mary have slowly been drifting apart, maybe from the beginning of the filming of this show. The first few seasons, there was still connection and hope and effort. But over the last number of years, it's conceivable that for 4 years that Cody and Mary have just drifted apart in a way that isn't blaming either one of them, that they're just drifting away from each other and not putting effort into each other. It kind of seems that way when I think about it, but they don't really focus on that. There isn't enough time. There's only so many episodes and there's so many wives that they just don't have the time to look into it. Plus, I think that they have a policy of not talking about that kind of thing unless it has to sneak through. Like Christine, she can't hold back, so it'll reveal itself. So maybe he's not hurt because he hasn't really been in love with her for a long time. I don't know.
Well aware that Mary and I haven't been taking care of our relationship at this time. So Mary's looking at what's going on social media, and she goes, "Don't these people understand that I am married?" And I'm like, "Hey, listen, for the sake of our family, will you just stop talking with these people?" And one time she's like, kind of like staring at me like deer in the headlights, like, and now I remember it. And I go, oh, I should have read that better.
It's interesting. It's notable that he is blaming himself. He's saying, I should have been different. This is consistent. Who knows what's going on behind the scenes, but this is consistent when there are problems. And I imagine that this is a philosophy that might have been modeled for him, or it's just evolved in him of, look, when something is going wrong with one of my wives, I have to take responsibility and I have to assume, and maybe he's always feeling a little guilty. You can imagine that. And that there's a theme of that, of just like, I can't be with you every day. I have to go now. And this assumption that if one of the wives is upset or hurt, that it's because of him. He hasn't been attentive enough. The thing that I just keep thinking, and I think I said this early on, is that for each of the sister wives, at least in the beginning, they talked about how when it's their night to get him, they have been missing him and are really putting a lot of energy into that night together, or that day together, or whatever, and are really hoping for a connection, right? And so for him, he's constantly having to show up in a big way by rotating around like that, right? Whereas for the rest of us, we can, at least non-polyamorous people, we can go through a few days of not having to show up for each other because at any moment we have access to each other. You know what I mean? So it makes me wonder if he has a policy of just like, look at yourself first, because it probably is true. And he has demonstrated that. He doesn't have to do that. He could be blaming other people. I'm sure he has moments like that. We've seen a little bit of it, but not really. So I will say, just on the surface, it's commendable. And I don't know. I really don't know if people hate him or like him. I'm going to take a guess and say people hate him. I'm also taking a guess, I guess, for the first time, that since things get juicy in season 14 or 15, that I'm guessing that he's a jerk face. I'm just going to take a guess. And that his future behavior really colors your reactivity to me reacting. And I would just hope that people understand that I've only seen thus far. So I don't know. He could be a serial killer later on, and it would be painful watching me compliment him. So I hope that everyone is okay with all of this. But this is commendable that he, in this moment, he just learned about it 3 weeks. I mean, imagine that it's 3 weeks after learning that your wife, that you've been married to for 25 years, had been cheating on you for a long time. And it's not like classic cheating, but it was there. And he appears to be blaming himself of like, I haven't been putting enough effort into this. And there was a moment when what he just described was that she couldn't hold it all in. And she's like, can't these people just realize that I'm married? And she's intimating that people are hitting on her online. And he's like, just stop talking to him. And then she's like a deer in headlights. And he's now looking back thinking, I should have asked her, what's that look? This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. So it's December, and for me anyway, the holiday season is filled with fond memories. I know that's not true for everyone, but regardless of one's personal experiences, I think that December is a good time to get a nice cozy blanket and get cozy, that kind of thing, at least for those of us in the northern latitudes. And speaking of getting cozy, I suppose, one could say that therapy is a great place to get cozy with ourselves, to wrap the warm blanket of therapy around us. And with the advent of online therapy, you can even stay home and go to therapy and sit on your favorite couch and be wrapped up in your favorite blanket. Well, one place you can find a therapist to do this with is at BetterHelp. If you're thinking of starting therapy, it's definitely worth giving a try. So find comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/Kirk today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Kirk.
That read was, I'm in a very bad situation and I can't say nothing.
I think it's touching for her to hear this, and I want to cry with her. I think she feels touched that he cares, that he has this reaction, which it is quite touching. That in this moment, he's blaming himself. it is touching. I think that's what's going on. And I would say, no, Cody. Yeah, why would you think this? There'd be no precedent for that. I mean, even people that are aware of, even myself, since I have to some extent clinically studied these catfishing cases, I would not suspect, based on that description, that my wife was being catfished. That would not be my suspicion.
The other time that I talked to her about it, it was just flowing tears. But I wasn't sure if she was done with me. And I was in a spot myself where I was just kind of patiently waiting for her to say, do you want to rekindle our relationship? Do you want to go back and do some more counseling? Do you want to work on this?
So I've seen this dynamic, and I wonder who's responsible for this, because there's a possibility that he is equally or more responsible for the distance, meaning that, he's saying, well, I'm waiting for her. And earlier he would say that when I would approach her, she would say, leave me alone, right? So you could argue that him giving her distance is actually complying with her request and foregoing his own needs and his own, wishes to appease her. But it's also possible that he could have tried harder. We don't know. He could have said, look, I'm not going to force you to do anything, but this is hard on me, this distance, right? And maybe that could have helped her, of like, oh, he needs me, he wants me, which makes me wonder if the sister wives, how they feel about that, because I could imagine maybe Robyn feels this because she's newer in the family, but I could see the other sister wives, if you ask them, do you think Cody needs you emotionally, not as like a mother to the kids, but romantically, attachment-wise, do you think he needs you? I could imagine that all of the sister wives, maybe Robyn included, would say, no, I don't think like he needs me. And they might think, well, he just must be getting those needs met other places, or men don't need those needs being met, which is stupid. But I wonder. So I just have this question, like, as they were distant, and we've heard that she was saying, leave me alone, how much responsibility is there for him of just like, hey, I want to talk about, we have to talk about this, or please, I'm begging you, can we talk about this? And that might have helped. Or had he been distancing himself and then later on she's like, leave me alone? I don't know.
To set the record straight, Mary, was there any physical relationship with this person?
No. I never met this person. I've never met this person. I've never seen him. I've never seen, the pictures that he sent to me.
I think that the question is, did you have phone sex, or did you have sexy talk between the two of you? Because I think we understood that she never met him in person. He might not even exist, right?
Were of an actor and said that they were him.
Okay, so if you didn't catch that, she just said, it sounds like she would later figure out that the pictures that she thought was him were that of an actor, which she later found out. Okay.
You did meet the friend.
I met this female friend. I would talk to, there would be times that I would be talking to him on the phone and he would have a temper tantrum of sorts and hang up the phone. And then I'd get calls from her saying, you better fix this, you better call. And
yeah, it's gotta be her, right? There's just no way, right? I mean, there's a way, I guess, but yeah. She's not even a good catfisher, really. But you don't have to be that good in order to trick people, especially people that are a wide open door. I don't know if I showed this, but the host asked Mary what needs were being met or not being met such that you were open to this or something like that. And Mary was like, I don't know if there are any things, but I just know that he made me laugh, and I felt laughter, and I hadn't had that in a long time. And I don't know if she just doesn't know what she needs, and I can't tell what she needs. I can't say for her, but what it looks like is that she had a need for closeness and intimacy and love and affection and contact and friendship and companionship and attention, energy, someone being interested in her. And it could be just a function of polygamy or even polyamory as a secondary thing of that. It's always going to feel that there's a deficit, and you are constantly trying to reassure yourself that everything's fine when it's not.
Tell him how much you love him, you better fix this situation. And so I'd have to...
Not to say that legitimate ethical non-monogamy and polyamory can't work for people, because it can, but in certain configurations, particularly if people aren't made for it, and they, like if they were a legit polyamorous family, like the sort of families that I know in Seattle, she would have a lot more contact with therapy and herself, and these questions would come up of like, do I want to have another relationship with someone? And if I do, maybe, or if I don't know, maybe I should just experiment and start hanging out with that one guy that I kind of have a crush on. And I'll talk with Cody and the rest about it, my polycule, and make some arrangements and set some ground rules, which polyamorous people generally are pretty good about. And then she meets up with him and has a lot of laughter and is like, oh, I'm clearly not getting enough of this in my life, and this is a good configuration. I have Cody, and I have my sister wives, and I have this guy that I meet up with, and he doesn't have anyone else seemingly, so he has a lot of attention to give me. This is nice, this is what I need in this moment, and I'll bring him over. He'll meet Cody. That can happen, and it actually can be really quite beautiful and meet people's needs in a very flexible way, right?
These 4 people, the truth.
It took a lot.
I made her.
How did you make her? How did you know?
I've been begging her for months to talk to me. I knew something wasn't right.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was hoping Cody would do that, but it doesn't make sense that Robyn would. I've been wondering about that, because in previous seasons, Robyn and Mary really had a bond and a close relationship. I was wondering if it was real or just played for the cameras or something, but if we just go off the edit, they were really bonded. For Robyn, she was looking for acceptance and legitimate, or to be legitimized as one of the sister wives, since she was the new one, right? And Mary's endorsement and approval was a big deal, because Mary is kind of considered to be the primary sister wife to some extent. So for Robyn, it meant a lot to her. And I think for Mary, it was an opportunity to connect with someone. I think Janelle would like to, but I think she really cuts herself off. And Christine was having a really hard time because of all the things that we talked about before. But I think for Mary, she was open to it. And it was an opportunity to have a different outcome this time, of just like, well, it hasn't gone well with previous sister wives in the beginning, and so I'm gonna put effort into this, and they really did bond. There's a lot of things, including Mary deciding to get legally divorced so that Robyn's kids could be adopted. That was a big deal. It's a big sacrifice. So, I mean, on one hand, it's like not really a sacrifice, because they don't really acknowledge the legality of that, because they consider all of their marriages to be just as legit as the next. But on the other hand, it is saying something. Anyway, so it sounds like for Robyn, she knew something was up. She obviously wouldn't think it was catfishing, but especially hearing, you might wake up one day and I'd be gone. And I've been wondering, like, I was saying earlier, like, isn't any one of them gonna say, "Wait what is happening? Tell me." Because if my wife told me that, like, yeah, I'd flip out, and until I had some answer, I would flip out. I don't know if I would badger my wife, but there would be times of badgering for sure. I would want to badger, but I don't know if I would if I got pushback or something. The way that I think Mary's not pushing back, but I think she just gets blank. So I was just thinking, if their relationships are as stated, then all of them should be freaking out. And although respecting her request for boundaries and leaving her alone or something, they personally would have investment and fear and hurt and anger and concern and their needs of just like, I need you. You're not just here. I need you. And it's interesting that Robyn is the only one that did. Robyn's the only one who's just like, I was asking her, what's going on? I'm begging her, tell me, because that would be the rational response. Unless you're not really dependent on her and you don't really care.
I was begging her to talk to me.
What made you decide to finally talk to them and tell them the truth?
And it's interesting to note that if Robyn hadn't had done that, then we might not know about it. Mary still might be victimized by these people, because it sounds like she told her, and then they filmed that scene that they put in the last episode, because they filmed that whole scene when they're at that restaurant, and all she said was she feels distant, essentially. And they interspersed all this catfishing stuff because I think they filmed it after it was revealed. Because obviously if she told the producers, the family would know in all likelihood, right?
I just knew I had to. I knew I couldn't keep doing that. They would ruin my life. That was said to me many times.
And this is a lesson for all of us, for people close to us, that now it doesn't give you permission to invade and to pester and to pressure, but when people suffer, they will dysfunctionally shut down, and they need us to put effort into trying to reach out to them and not just saying, well, they told me to back off, so I'm backing off. Like I said, it's not permission to invade. This is more likely pertinent to you out there who have teenagers as kids and will get the whatever and the pushback. And a lot of suffering can happen. Someone can go through a sexual assault and not talk about it, and they shut down. Their grades start going down. They get depressed. They stop hanging out with their friends. They don't seem happy when you hang out. And you ask questions and they give you, leave me alone. And, I'm not saying invade, but it doesn't mean that you just say, well, I give up. They asked me to back away and I'm going to respect that. You have to dig down a little deeper and say, like, is that really what's best for the situation? Is that really what they're even asking for, right? Is that really what's at the core of even what they might be trying to communicate? Again, I'm not saying invade, and I'm not saying, hey, teenager that's telling me to leave them alone. There's this guy on YouTube that said I'm supposed to pester you eternally. I'm not saying that, but it is saying that for her, it sounds like ultimately she liked that Robyn was repeatedly begging and pestering her, right? All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself and take care of others, because we all deserve it. We really, really do.